Okay, guys, so we're going to pick this up and talk very briefly about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So remember, when we look at this, we have to really look at it in light of the fact that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are really meant to be viewed as a complete set. They're not meant to be looked at just separately. And the Constitution is the fulfillment or the realization of Jefferson's vision for what America should be. The Constitution begins with a small portion called the Preamble. It's a paragraph that's just one sentence, albeit a rather large sentence. So the Preamble spells out the fact that the Constitution was made by the people of the United States. It is not made like by the group of delegates, even though, I mean, yes, it was, but it really is the people of the United States who are responsible for the Constitution's creation because they will be the ones approving and ratifying it. Ratify is just a fancy word that means approve. Okay, so the people created the Constitution. Now, the Constitution has 6 goals. Number one, to establish a more perfect union. So the goals are the whys of the Constitution. Up until 1787, the government was run by a document called the Articles of Confederation. The Confederation Congress was an absolute train wreck because it really could not function and do anything because everybody was so scared of the government being too powerful. The Constitution is meant to create a better or more perfect form of government for the entirety of the country. Establish justice. Part of the problem under the Articles of Confederation was there was no uniformity between the states regarding, who had the right to do what, who didn't have the right to do what your like freedoms were, or what laws basically set. The idea of establishing justice is to create a uniform, enforceable, logical system of justice that applies over everybody across the country. Ensure domestic tranquility. Domestic tranquility is peace between the states. Under the Articles, there were constant brouhahas erupting between different states over piddly, ridiculous rules and laws, or bigger questions about like who had the right to trade where and could people charge taxes from one state to another. Provide for the common defense. No longer was it going to be 13 basically separate small countries that each handled their own affairs. It was now going to be one country under one government that provided for the general defense of the whole country. What was an assault or an attack on one was considered an assault and attack on all. It also prevented states from doing dumb things like actually going to war on their own without somebody keeping them in check. Now, what I would like you to do is, if as you're coming along here, if you're writing it out or looking at it, either put a little like asterisk here, or I'm trying desperately to do a small asterisk, or, underline or highlight this or whatever. Number 5, promote the general welfare. Number 5 is the most problematic of any of the 6 goals of the Constitution because they never really outline how to promote the general welfare. And I personally think one of the best ways to understand this is to look at the 2 political parties we find ourselves with. The 2 political parties basically fall on one of 2 lines in promoting the general welfare. For Democrats, promoting the general welfare is we make the government bigger and stronger, we take more money and we spend it on stuff that we need. And when you have problems, the government is there to help you take care of those problems. That's promoting the general welfare. For the Republicans, it's the government should be smaller. The government should take less money and spend less money. And when you have problems, you need to figure it out. It's not really overly specific in the Constitution what the founders really kind of thought. So you're kind of left to draw your own conclusions. And more significantly, the interpretation of this promoting the general welfare is really where the two parties sort of fall off with each other. And there's any number of things that come out of that on any number of issues you can pick up. Number six, finally, secure the blessings of liberty. For ourselves, that would be the here and now of the Constitutional Convention era. And for our posterity, that's the people, the children who will come after us. The Constitution is meant not only for now, but for later. It's meant to last. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that the word choice of ordained, it's not we, the people of the United States, make the Constitution, we ordain it. The word ordained has a very religious feel to it because in, in various religions, the ministers or leaders of the religion are ordained to pursue their job. It's this idea that there's like a sacred relationship. And this goes back to what we talked about with subsidiarity, that God gave people rights, privileges, and authority. People create governments to protect those rights and privileges. So there is this sort of like sacred commissioning that God gives people the authority to create the government, and this is the government that they create. It's more of just an agreement or a contract. It's actually this unique relationship between the two parties, and that's why the Constitution is ordained and not just written out. Now, let me shrink this in.